Hello dear viewer, Baitmaster Murdoch X here to talk about a game that teaches players to push the wrong button. We are of course talking about River King, A Wonderful Journey. I hate fishing games. Nothing ruins a perfectly good time more than having a lure casting minigame thrown in. The only exception that I can think of to this is Final Fantasy XV. That is a good fishing minigame. Lately though, I've been making it a point to find the good in games, while running through my mind about titles that I may have not given a fair shake on my first go. This was the first one that popped into my head. In my first playthrough, I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. Pick one of the 4 family members to play as and go out and catch some fish. There's not much inside of this game that teaches the player how to play, except for this lady that tells us to use the circle button to reel in fish, which is untrue. One of the strange things that happened during the PS2 era when bringing games over from Japan was the common practice of swapping the circle and X buttons in games. In Japan, the circle button is considered the default yes or activate button, while in the States we decided that the X button should be used for this. There are plenty of games that don't switch these buttons, but Fisher King did and forgot to change the in-game translation to reflect this. The instruction manual does list the correct controls though, and that counts for something, right? Speaking of the instruction manual, if you ever decide to give River King a shot, make sure to read it. There's loads of useful information in there that didn't make it into the game, such as fish locations. On the other hand, there is information that is not in the game or in the instruction manual, like what kind of fish you need to catch for fishing challenges. Well, that's not entirely true. The first time you talk to this guy, he mentions it, and then never again. If you fail the challenge on the first try, which is very likely, hopefully you remember what kind of fish he wanted you to catch because he will never tell you again. I had to look this up in an online guide. The most common activity in River King, as you may suspect, is the catching of fish. As this also has a bit of role-playing mechanics thrown in, there are ways to level up and upgrade your gear. Fish can be caught and sold at the market, and the money can be used to buy new poles, bobs, lures, bait, and more. The fishing mechanics are simple, but confusing as they're never explained, so let's cover this real fast. If you're going bait fishing, then you select a pole, bob, and attach bait to the hook. In the first area, this can be a worm, insect, or frog. Other bait options open up throughout the game. After selecting a spot where you'd like to stand, you can select fish from the menu or press the L1 button. From here, you hold the X button and release when you want the bait and bob to drop into the water. If any nearby fish are interested in your bait, they'll come and nibble on it exactly twice. The first time the bob will, bob, but the second time it will be pulled underwater, and this is when you press the X button again, which will begin the reeling portion of this segment of the game. The view switches to an underwater perspective, and the player now holds the X button, not the circle button like the in-game guide says. This will reel in the fish. If this aquatic bastard decides to fight back, release the X button for a moment, then hit it again. If you continue to hold the X button during these fight back moments, the line will snap and the fish will be lost. The further that the line has been cast or has drifted away from the player, the longer these reel-in segments last. I never tried lure fishing, so I can't talk about that, but I did play with the fly fishing a little bit, and the way the casting works is different. I never did figure it out, but if you just tap the X button, it's enough to get it out there. I probably should have checked the instruction manual for this. I mentioned the instruction manual because there's some useful information that's listed in there that would have been better off if it were listed in the game. For example, that fishing tournament I mentioned earlier requires the player to catch Ayu fish, despite only mentioning it once and never again. I can't tell you how many times I started the fishing contest and went out and caught a ton of fish just for the announcer to say that I caught no fish, which I would then sell while questioning reality. The good news is once you do figure out which fish you need to catch, the instruction manual has a map and tells you where they are located at. Besides selling the fish, you can also purchase cooking recipe and cook these fish. I was excited about this because selling fish gains you around 5 to 10 gold per catch, which makes the grind to buy a 750 gold fishing rod take a long time. I was excited to find any way to increase my profitability. Bad news though, you can't sell cooked food. At least nowhere that I found. You can eat it and restore some health, but spending 5 gold to increase all of your health is a better investment than catching fish and spending 500 gold on a recipe that repairs only a small amount of health. There are cooking contests later in the game, but after 8 hours of grinding and fighting my way through all of this nonsense, I gave up and quit playing. So I never got to play these. One thing that I can say about this game is it is outrageously relaxing. This may be unique to my own experience though. In my home, we have a white noise machine that we play to help us fall asleep from time to time. We set it to the wilderness sound setting, which are the same sounds that this game makes while playing. During my first real attempt to play this game again, I fell asleep several times. During my second attempt, I muted the television and put on headphones and listened to an audiobook to keep myself awake and engaged during this grind. Speaking of muting the game, another piece of advice. For some reason, by default, the rumble feature is turned off in this title. Turn that on. It makes catching the fish much easier as it will rumble at important times during the fish catching moments. There are also audio clues, but they're not as clear, and I also had to mute them because of the falling asleep thing. Most PS2 games have a way to turn down the music without turning off the sound effects, but no such luck in this title. As far as the RPG mechanics go, we have quests to catch certain fish, often of a certain size, and we even have a Pokemon-esque rival. By pushing through these quests, new areas with new opportunities become unlocked. I mentioned fishing bait earlier, which can be bought from the store, but it's easier to just hammer the examine button while standing in the right places. If you find a spot that gives a certain kind of bait, just keep on tapping this button in the menu until your inventory is full. As far as upgrades go, larger fish baskets can also be bought that carry more fish and require less visits to the market to sell them. There's also a leveling system that upgrades the character you choose to play as. The only upgrade that I really noticed though is the ability to run by holding the circle button is something that's added later. Quests and a leveling system. It's clear that they wanted to have RPG elements in this game, but it feels incomplete. There's so much potential here, but the Metacritic score of 51 is fair. Half of a perfect score for half of a game. I went into this because I wanted to find the fun in it. My goal isn't to bash this game, and there are some nice parts. Because this game has so much grind, it's good for playing while listening to audiobooks. I finished the Enigma Cube by Douglas E. Richards while playing this. I won't have fond memories of this game, but I did enjoy the book, which kept me awake long enough to say that I gave this game a fair shot. On that note, if this is a game that you enjoy, no hate. Please tell us in the comments what makes it good. My goal was to beat this game, but after 8 hours and many frustrations, I gave up. There are parts of this game like lure fishing, catching shrimp, treasure maps, cooking contests, and the weird animal trivia parts that I just never got to. Maybe this game gets better after the 20-hour mark, I don't know. I went in with the best of intentions, but my hatred for fishing games remains. Are there any good fishing games or fishing minigames? I haven't tried the fishing pole controller games on the PS2 yet. Are those any good? There has to be a good one out there, I'm sure of it, and I will find it. And when I find it, I'll report back. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy PlayStation 2 content, consider subscribing.